The letter slipped out of the old jacket pocket like it had been waiting years for this moment. My cousin unfolded it, half curious, half careless, and began to read out loud before anyone could stop him. The room fell silent. Forks froze, glasses trembled in mid-air. His voice shook at first, then steadied each word, slicing through the heavy air. I never told you the full truth. There is another part of me, another part of our story. I felt my stomach twist. I wanted to grab the paper from his hand, tear it into shreds, pretend none of it was real. But it was too late. The words were already out, the damage already done. Every head turned toward me. My mother's hand covered her mouth. My sister's eyes filled with disbelief. Someone muttered, "No, it can't be," and another whispered, "All these years." And me, I sat there motionless, burning under the weight of 100 stares. The man I had built my life around, the man I had called my hero, had left behind a secret so large it swallowed everything. And somehow, because I had been the one who worshipped him the loudest, all that shame landed right on me. Up until that moment, the day had been about mourning and remembering. We had gathered in my grandfather's house after his funeral, surrounded by photographs, old books, the faint smell of pipe tobacco still clinging to the curtains. People told stories, how he used to whistle while fixing the fence, how he never missed a Sunday service, how he carried himself with the kind of dignity you don't see much anymore. I clung to those stories like a lifeline. They were proof that my image of him was real, that I hadn't been wrong to admire him the way I did. But the letter tore through all of that. I stared at the ink, bold against the yellowed paper, and felt the ground tilt. He had written about debts, about mistakes, about someone outside this family who mattered to him, mattered enough to confess with his last words. My father cleared his throat, a nervous habit he'd inherited from my grandfather himself. "That's enough," he said sharply. But no one listened. They wanted to know more. They needed to. My aunt snatched the letter from my cousin and read, silently, her lips tightening, her knuckles white. When she looked up, her eyes found mine. And in that look, I felt accused, as if I should have known. As if my admiration for him had been a lie I had forced on all of them. I opened my mouth to speak, to defend him, or maybe to defend myself, but no words came out. My chest was heavy, my throat dry. I could hear the whispers spreading like wildfire. So all the talk about honor, was that just a mask? He wasn't who we thought he was. What does this mean for us? I wanted to shout back that none of it erased the man I knew, the man who taught me to ride a bike, who showed me how to sand wood smooth, who put his arm around me at my lowest moments. But my voice stayed trapped, because part of me wondered, were they right? Had I loved a version of him that never existed? My mother finally spoke, her voice trembling. Why would he hide this from us? No one answered, because the only person who could was gone. I stood up too quickly, my chair scraping loud against the floor. "I need air," I muttered, though it sounded weak even to me. I stumbled out to the porch, the evening air sharp in my lungs. Behind me, the noise grew, raised voices, questions, accusations, the kind of noise that splits families apart. I gripped the railing, knuckles, pale heart hammering. My grandfather had been my anchor, my example, my certainty. And in a single moment, that anchor had been yanked away, leaving me adrift in a storm I didn't understand. I wanted to scream at him, even in death. Why didn't you trust us with the truth? Why did you leave me to find out like this? But the only answer was silence, broken only by the faint echo of my family tearing itself apart inside the house. And standing there, humiliated, betrayed, I realized The story of who we were as a family had just shattered, and I didn't know if we'd ever put it back together again. When I walked back inside, the letter sat in the middle of the table like a weapon no one wanted to touch. My aunt had folded it neatly, but the words were already carved into the air, into each of us. The revelation was simple, brutal. My grandfather had another child, a son born before he married my grandmother, a boy raised in another town with another family. He hadn't vanished from his life. He had written about visiting, about sending money quietly, about the guilt of building one home while leaving another in the din. And now, decades later, that truth had landed like an earthquake. At first, no one spoke. Then the voices came. "So all those years," he lied to us. One cousin snapped, her face red. "He was just a man," my father muttered. "Rubbing. Mistakes," another cousin shouted. "This isn't forgetting an anniversary. This is a whole other family." The words cut through me. I wanted to defend him, but how could I, the man I'd held up as the gold standard of honesty and integrity, had carried a secret so large it rewrote everything we thought we knew? From that day forward, we weren't one family anymore. We were factions. Some clung to the image of him as a good man who slipped once, long ago. Others saw him as a fraud, his memory now tainted. And in the middle were those too stunned to choose a side. The divide seeped into everything. Family dinners turned tense. Conversations stalled before they began. People whispered in corners, glancing at me as if I should have answers. After all, I had been the one who bragged the most about him, who spoke of his values, his wisdom, his strength. Now I was the fool who hadn't known the truth. The phone calls started. My mother asked if I was eating. My sister told me we needed to process together. My uncle said we should keep it quiet, protect the family name. But each voice pulled me in a different direction until I couldn't bear to hear any of them. So I stopped answering. I silenced the notifications, let messages pile up. I spent nights staring at the ceiling, trying to picture the boy my grandfather had written about. A stranger who by blood was my uncle. Did he know about us? Did he hate us? Or had he grown up believing we were the imposters, the other family? The questions hollowed me out, and the silence I wrapped around myself only made the fracture deeper. Cousins stopped speaking. Aunts traded sharp words in church pews. My father drank more, his voice rising, his patience thinning. The family I had known, a net of love and laughter, was unraveling strand by strand, and in the middle of it I was drifting further away, untethered. I told myself distance was safer, that maybe if I stayed apart I wouldn't have to choose between defending him or condemning him. But deep down I knew the truth I was already choosing. I was choosing absence, and absence, I was learning, can be its own betrayal. I thought silence would protect me. If I stayed away, if I kept my phone dark and my door shut, the storm might pass without tearing me apart. But storms don't fade when you hide. They grow louder. And before long, the silence I chose became the loudest sound in my life. At work, I stopped showing up on time. The reports that used to come easy sat unfinished, my screen blinking at me like a taunt. My boss called me in one morning, his voice even measured. "Is something going on at home?" I lied, said no. He didn't believe me. I could see it in the way his eyes lingered, weighing whether I was worth the trouble. I left that meeting with my heart pounding, but not because of him. It was because in my pocket was the letter. I'd folded it small, like making it smaller would change its weight. But it pressed against me everywhere I went. At night, I laid it on the table and read it over and over. My grandfather's handwriting, steady even in confession, tore at me. I had a son before you knew me. I could not bring him into this family, not without losing the one I was building. Forgive me. Those words, bent every memory I had of him. I remembered him at the lake, pushing me into the water and laughing as I splashed. Back then, I thought his laughter meant the world was safe. Now I wondered if he had seen another boy's face in mine. I remembered him at my high school graduation, clapping the loudest his hand on my shoulder. Back then it was pride. Now it felt like penance. Even the way he sat at Sunday dinners, straight-backed, calm, telling us stories of discipline and honesty, now played like theatre. A man acting out the role of himself. The memories became knives, and every night I cut myself on them again and again. The family wasn't faring better. My father started drinking more. My mother drifted from room to room like a ghost, cleaning things that weren't dirty. My aunts argued in whispers, cousins split into camps, some insisting we protect his legacy, others determined to strip it bare. We stopped gathering for meals, we stopped calling each other for birthdays. One cousin even blocked me on social media after I refused to pick a side. The net of family I had always taken for granted was gone, unraveling thread by thread, and I was collapsing with it. Sleep wouldn't come. Food tasted like dust. I wandered my apartment at 3 a.m., pacing from window to window as if answers might appear in the streetlights. One night, desperate, I pulled out the old photo albums, page after page of his face, his arm around me, around all of us. But instead of comfort, it was confusion. Was any of it real? Or had we all been extras in a story he wrote to hide his shame? I whispered into the dark, "Who are you really?" But the photographs didn't answer. That was the downfall. Not just losing him, but losing the version of myself that believed in him without question. Losing the family that had once been my anchor. By the end of that month, I wasn't just adrift, I was drowning. And worse, I wasn't sure I wanted to surface. The night he came into my room, I was sitting in the dark, staring at nothing. The TV was on sound muted, some late-night rerun flickering across the screen. I hadn't eaten, hadn't moved for hours. The only light came from the street lamp outside, drawing a pale stripe across the floor. The door creaked soft at first, then a small voice followed. "Dad," I turned my head, slow heavy. My son stood there in his pajamas, hair messy, clutching his toy truck like it was a shield. He looked so small against the doorway, so fragile in a house that felt too big without my grandfather in it. "Yeah, buddy," my voice cracked. He shuffled in, climbed onto the bed beside me, without asking. He sat cross-legged, placed the truck on the blanket, and looked at me with those wide, searching eyes. And then he asked the question that split me open. Are we still a family? The words landed harder than the letter ever had. Not because they were complicated, because they weren't. They were simple, pure, and they held the weight of everything I'd been running from. I froze, my throat closing. I wanted to give him the easy answer, the quick yes that would push the fear away, but I couldn't lie to him, not the one person who deserved the truth more than anyone. I pulled him closer, wrapped my arm around his shoulders. His body was warm, steady grounding, my lips pressed against his hair as I whispered, "Yes. We're still a family, always." He let out a small sigh, satisfied, and began rolling the truck across the blanket wheels, squeaking softly. For him, the question was answered. For me, it had only just begun, because saying those words out loud meant I had to mean them, and meaning them meant I couldn't keep hiding. Families don't survive on silence. They survive on truth, even when truth hurts. We sat there for a while. His breathing slowed, steady, drifting toward sleep. I watched his eyelids grow heavy, his hands slacken around the truck. And as he drifted off, I realized something my grandfather's secret had broken me, but it didn't have to break us. I had a choice. I could keep running from the truth, or I could face it for him, for us. When he finally fell asleep, I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling. My mind replayed his words. Are we still a family? Yes, we were, but only if I found the courage to make it so. I picked up my phone. My hands trembled as I typed 4 words, "Can we meet, please?" I sent it to my sister, the one who had pushed hardest for us to face the truth. The reply came almost instantly. Yes. Tell me when. For the first time in weeks, something inside me shifted. Not relief, not forgiveness, but resolve. I looked at my son sleeping peacefully beside me, and I knew this wasn't about me anymore. It was about the future, about the kind of family he would grow up believing in. That simple question asked, in the dark by a boy clutching a toy truck, became the turning point. Because when your child asks if you're still a family, you don't just answer. You make it true. I chose a cafe across town, one of those quiet places with dim lights and chipped wooden tables where no one cares enough to eavesdrop. I got there early, ordered a coffee I didn't touch, and sat staring at the door. Every time it opened, my chest tightened until finally she walked in. My sister. She looked older than the last time I'd seen her, though only a few weeks had passed. Dark circles under her eyes, shoulders hunched like the weight of the letter hadn't left her either. She spotted me and paused, hesitant, before sliding into the chair across from mine. Neither of us spoke at first, just the hiss of the espresso machine and the clink of cups around us. Finally, she broke the silence. "You look terrible," she said. "So do you," I answered. And somehow, that honesty loosened the knot in my throat. She folded her hands on the table, eyes fixed on them. I didn't want it to happen like that. The letter being read out loud in front of everyone, I wanted to, control it better. I let out a bitter laugh. Control. That letter blew us apart. You could have stopped him. You could have burned it. Her eyes snapped up to mine. And keep lying, pretend forever. That's what you wanted. I opened my mouth, then closed it. Because yes, part of me had wanted that, to keep the perfect version of him alive, to never feel this humiliation. I swallowed hard. I looked up to him, more than anyone. And now it's like every good thing he ever did is gone. Her expression softened. No, it's not gone. It's just complicated now. We sat with that word, complicated. It felt too small for the storm we were in, but it was true. I keep thinking about the boy, I said quietly. The other son. Do you think he knows about us? She shrugged. Maybe, maybe not, but he's out there, which means Grandpa's story isn't just ours anymore. I pressed my palms against my eyes, the pressure sharp. How do we live with this? How do we face Mom and Dad, the cousins, the whole family? Half of them hate him now. The other half are pretending nothing happened. Her voice steadied. We don't choose for them, we choose for us. That stopped me. I dropped my hands, looked at her. She leaned forward, eyes clear. I'm tired of silence, she said. Tired of acting like the truth is poison. It's not. It's painful, but it's not poison. If we want to survive this, we have to stop lying to ourselves and to each other. I shook my head, and what just walk into Sunday dinner and announce we're fine with it, that we forgive him. Not fine, not forgiven, not yet, but honest. We start there. Her words settled between us like a fragile truce. The waitress came by, asked if we wanted refills. We both shook our heads. The coffee in front of me had gone cold, untouched. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. What if honesty breaks us even more? She gave me a sad smile. Then at least it breaks us true. For the first time in weeks, I felt something shift inside me. Not relief, not joy, but a crack in the wall I'd built around myself. A sliver of light. I can try, I said. The words were heavy, but real. She reached across the table, placed her hand over mine. That's all I wanted. We sat there like that, two siblings in a broken cafe, holding on to the smallest thread of hope. The rebuilding didn't happen all at once. It started in fragments, a text message here and there, a photo of our grandfather sent late at night with the caption, "Do you remember this day?" An article about forgiveness, a memory of him fixing the porch swing. We pieced together the good alongside the bad, like patching a quilt with torn fabric. It didn't look perfect, but it was something. I began digging deeper. I visited old friends of my grandfather, men from the church neighbors who remembered him from decades ago. I asked questions I'd been afraid to ask. Some shrugged, said they knew nothing. Others hesitated, then told me pieces of the truth, that yes, he had carried a burden, that he sent money away, that sometimes he looked like a man haunted. The more I heard, the more the picture shifted. He wasn't the saint I'd worshipped. He wasn't the fraud I'd feared. He was human. And maybe that was the hardest truth of all. Weeks later, I met my sister again at the same cafe. We didn't need to order this time. We just sat, and she pulled a small envelope from her bag. "What's that?" I asked. "Something I found in his desk," she said. Another note. My pulse quickened as she slid it across the table. I opened it with trembling hands. It was short. Just one line in his familiar handwriting. "I hope you'll remember me for the love I gave, not the secrets I kept." I stared at it, throat-tight vision blurring. My sister's hand closed over mine again. And in that moment I realized rebuilding wouldn't come from erasing his flaws. It would come from holding his love and his failures side by side and choosing to keep going. We met at the house again, not for a feast, not for a ceremony, just for a talk. The living room felt smaller than I remembered, the kind of small that comes from too many unspoken things pressing in from the walls. My mother set cups on coasters that didn't need them. My father stood by the window and pretended to fix the blinds. My sister sat on the edge of the couch, palms flat like she was bracing for a wave. I stood. No speech, no grand reveal, just a steady breath and the envelope I'd been carrying for days. "I've been asking around," I said. "Neighbors, men from church, an old friend of his. I found a few pieces he never said out loud." I looked at my father, he looked away, and I found this, I added, tapping the envelope. A line he wrote, not to defend himself, not to erase anything, just to say something true before he ran out of time. No one moved, the house listened with us. I set the envelope on the coffee table, but I didn't open it. Before we read it, I need to say this. I've been angry, humiliated. I felt like a fool for loving him the way I did. I wanted to tear down every story he ever told. I swallowed slow, but I also remember the man who showed up every Saturday no matter what. The man who taught me to sand wood, slow and even until the grain glowed. Those two men, they're the same man. And I don't know how to hold both yet. But I'm trying. My mother's eyes filled. My father's jaw trembled, a tremor he tried to hide. My sister's shoulders dropped just a little. I slid the paper free. His handwriting steady as always, even at the end. He wrote, I said, voice low, "I hope you'll remember me for the love I gave, not the secrets I kept." No one spoke. The sentence lay there, gentle and heavy, like a coat we weren't sure we could wear. My mother reached for it first. She read it again, lips moving. A sound came out of her, not a sob, not a sigh. A sound you make when something sharp finally leaves the body. "He loved us," she whispered, "even when he was wrong." She pressed the paper to her chest like it was warm. My father didn't take the page. He stared at the empty fireplace instead. "I thought I knew how to be a man because I watched him," he said, voice rough. "Stand straight, keep your word, make a plan. I never learned what to do when you fall." He laughed, once a broken little laugh. Maybe he didn't either. I stepped closer to him. You don't have to stand straight right now, I said. You just have to stand with us. His eyes flicked to mine. They were wet the way a storm makes the world blur. He nodded once, and that one nod felt like a new kind of promise. My sister wiped her face with the heel of her hand. I was so sure we had to protect the name, she said, sound small honest. That saying nothing kept us safe. But quiet wasn't safety, it was a cage. It was, I said. And we all locked it a little. We sat. We let the quiet be a chair, not a judge. I keep seeing the other son, I said after a while. A man now, somewhere carrying his own version of this story. Maybe he hates us. Maybe he never knew. Maybe he knew everything and thought we were the secret. The thought hurt more than I expected. My mother closed her eyes. If he knocks on this door, she said, I will open it. My father rubbed his palm over the window frame, as if sanding it smooth. If he knocks, he said, voice steadier, we'll make room at this table. He paused, then looked at me. If he doesn't knock, maybe we knock first. A new kind of silence. Not dread. Possibility. I reached for the little spiral notebook I'd started to carry, the one where I'd written questions I used to be afraid to ask. I read them out one by one, not an interrogation, more like a map. What did he do wrong? I said. What did he do right? What did we learn? And what do we refuse to repeat? We answered slowly, each of us from a different edge of the same hurt. What he did wrong, my sister said, was hide a living person inside a secret. No one belongs there. What he did right, my mother said, was show up through storms I didn't even know we were in. What we learned, my father said, is that pride is not the same as strength. What we refuse to repeat, I said, is the rule that pain must be carried in private. We breathed. We looked at each other in that new light, a little harsher, a little kinder. I told them the rest of what I'd learned. The neighbor who remembered my grandfather mailing cash on the same day every month. The friend who confessed he once drove him 2 towns over and waited in the truck eyes on the dashboard, hands in his lap. He wasn't proud of it, the friend had said. He was faithful to a promise he didn't know how to keep in the open. That's the part that breaks me, my father whispered. He asked the wrong thing of himself. To love and to disappear at the same time. We don't have to ask that, I said. We can choose different. We talked until the light moved across the floor and the house forgot to be small. We did not fix it. We did not forgive and forget. We named what hurt and we left it on the table long enough to see it clearly. When our voices got thin, we stopped. When someone started to defend, we waited. When the room tilted toward blame, we reached out and straightened it. Tomorrow, my sister said, finally, we tell the others. Not a spectacle, just the truth, spoken plain. Tomorrow, my father said. He looked older and younger at once, like a boy who had just decided to become a different kind of man. My mother folded the letter back into its envelope and slid it toward me. You keep it, she said. You were the one who read it as a whole sentence. Not a weapon. I tucked it away. It felt less like a stone, more like a compass. That night I stood in the kitchen alone, rinsing cups, listening to the simple music of water and porcelain. I thought about my son, about the truck on my bedspread, about the question he asked that pulled me back from the edge. I thought about the other son, somewhere living with a gap we could fill or at least name. I thought about my grandfather, a man of love and secrets, now a man of love and consequences too. Healing didn't arrive with trumpets. It arrived like this, in a house that had learned to breathe again, in a family that had learned a new verb, to stay. Not because staying was easy, not because staying made us noble, but because staying gave us time. Time to practice, to fail, to try again. Time to carry the same heavy thing together, which is always lighter than carrying it alone. Before I went to bed, I wrote my own single line on a scrap of paper and stuck it to the fridge with a tired magnet. Not a rule, not yet. A reminder. Tell the truth and don't run. In the morning, we would call the others. We would make a small dinner, not fancy, not loud. We would read one sentence and then another. We would leave space. We would not hurry the parts that needed to go slow. And if the doorbell rang and a stranger became kin, we would learn a new kind of welcome, one that doesn't pretend there was never a wound. I turned off the lights one by one and stood in the doorway listening to the house settle. The floor creaked, the pipes hummed, the night pressed its forehead to the windows. I pressed mine back just once. We were not finished, we were finally beginning. The table was smaller this time, no cousins, no neighbors, no extended family, just us, my parents, my sister, my son and me. We chose it that way on purpose. If healing was going to happen, it had to begin in a circle small enough to hold. My mother set down bowls of stew steam curling up like signals. My father poured water into glasses with shaking hands, trying not to spill. My sister placed a pie in the center, her voice soft, something sweet to help us listen. We didn't dive in. We sat for a moment, hands in our laps, eyes on the food, like a family learning to eat again. Finally, I cleared my throat. We said we'd try honesty, not speeches, just truth. My father nodded. My mother folded her hands. My sister met my eyes. I pulled the envelope from my pocket, the one with my grandfather's line inside. I set it on the table. We can't change the letter. We can't change the years he kept silent. But we can decide what we do with it now. I slid it open and read his words again. I hope you'll remember me for the love I gave, not the secrets I kept. My mother closed her eyes, lips trembling. My father looked down, jaw tight. My sister wiped at her cheeks, silent. Then my son, sitting on a cushion to reach the table, piped up. That means he loved us, right? We all looked at him, his small face so certain. I felt something loosen inside me. Yes, buddy, I said. It means he loved us, even when he was wrong. The silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was waiting like soil ready for seeds. I pulled out a small notepad and set it on the table. I think we need something new, I said. Not just a letter from the past, a promise for the future. We passed the pen around. Each of us wrote one line. My sister, first, no more secrets that break us. My mother, we speak even when it's hard. My father, slow and deliberate. We forgive, but we don't forget. I wrote, we stay even in the storm. Then I handed the pen to my son. He gripped it awkwardly, tongue between his teeth, and scrawled the words, in big uneven letters, choose each other. When he set the pen down, the room went quiet. That last line sat like a cornerstone. We all read the list together, each voice shaky but firming with each word. By the end, my mother was crying openly, my father's hand rested on hers, and my sister was smiling through tears. We taped the paper to the fridge with the old heart-shaped magnet. Crooked, imperfect, but secure. After dinner, we carried our plates to the sink, bumping into each other in the small kitchen. It felt ordinary, and maybe that was the miracle that ordinary had returned. Later, we moved to the porch, my parents on the swing with my son between them, his head on my mother's shoulder. My sister leaned against the railing. I stood beside her, close enough to share the same air. She whispered, "Thank you for staying." I looked at her, then at the family in front of us. "We'll forget," I said. "We'll stumble, but we'll remember again. That's what choosing means." The night air was cool. The cicadas hummed. My father's hand tapped a soft rhythm on the swing arm. My mother hummed a tune. I knew from childhood. I felt the shape of the future, not perfect, not simple, but possible. When it was time to leave, my father hugged me longer than usual. My mother pressed leftovers into my hands. My sister slipped the envelope back into my pocket. "Keep it," she whispered, "not to haunt us, but to remind us." On the way to the car, my son asked the question again, quieter this time. "Dad, are we still a family?" I squeezed his hand. "Yes," I said, steady, no wobble in my voice. "We are, and now we know how to be one." He smiled, satisfied. We drove home with the windows cracked, the cool night air rushing in. At a red light, I touched the envelope in my pocket. Then the paper on the fridge replayed in my mind. 5 promises, 5 lanterns out for the road ahead. The light turned green. We went forward. End.